Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. An important letter to humanity from Neale Donald Walsch and Steve Farrell. We call upon all people of conscience across every land and tradition to turn their hearts and attention to this urgent moment in human history. Our world is at a crossroads. The choices we make now will determine whether we bequeath to our children and their children a planet of flourishing and peace, or one of fragmentation and despair. The hour has come when silence and delay are no longer options. The hour has come to act. If we are to pass along a healthy planet to future generations, we must face the truth with courage. The path humanity is walking today is dangerous. It is marked by deep division, reckless disregard for the earth, and a growing illusion that we are separate from one another. This path creates exposure and peril for all of us. Yet, there is another way. There is a life-affirming path, a path that heals, uplifts, and offers the promise of a thriving future. That path is already within our reach, if only we choose it. For millennia, humanity's greatest spiritual teachers have proclaimed a single truth. All of life is deeply interconnected. There is an underlying unity and oneness at the heart of existence. Prophets, sages, and visionaries across every culture and tradition have expressed this wisdom in their own ways, pointing humanity towards compassion, justice, and harmony. Today, modern science affirms the same reality, describing the profound entanglement of all of us. Albert Einstein warned us that the notion of separation is an optical delusion, a trick of perception that blinds us to our true reality. And it is that delusion of separation that has become the seedbed of our collective dysfunction. When we believe ourselves to be isolated, my nation against yours, my faith against yours, my interests above yours, we cut ourselves off from life itself. We dishonor one another. We degrade the earth. We lose our way. Yet the truth of our unity remains. We are not separate beings fighting for survival in a hostile universe. We are expressions of one life, emanations of one source, members of a single human family sharing a single planetary home. When we awaken to this truth, something shifts within us. Our priorities change, our values expand, our compassion deepens. We begin to see not only what divides us, but what connects us, what has always connected us. To live in this awareness is not an abstract spiritual idea. It is a practical necessity. Unity calls us to listen rather than judge. It calls us to treat every person with the dignity and integrity they deserve. It calls us to create cultures of compassion, not fear, beginning in our homes, extending into our communities, our nations, and our world. It calls us to stop taking sides, for God does not take sides. There is no us versus them in the divine reality. There is only us. Imagine what could unfold if we embrace this truth. Imagine nations choosing cooperation over conflict. Imagine communities choosing generosity over suspicion. Imagine families choosing love over fear. Imagine an earth restored, healed by humanity's care instead of wounded by its neglect. This is not a fantasy. It is the most practical vision before us. For the alternative, the continuation of our division, exploitation, and denial will bring nothing less than self-destruction. We stand then at the threshold moment. The winds of history are asking us to decide who we truly are. Will we cling to the delusion of separation until it tears us apart? Or will we awaken to our unity and step boldly into a new era of shared flourishing? The answer is not written in advance. It will be written by the choices we make now, by the actions we take together. Let us be the generation that turns the tide. Let us be the ones who choose unity over division, compassion over fear, truth over illusion. Let us be the ones who refuse to hand down a fractured world to our children. Let us be the ones who say with clarity, with courage, and with love, we are one, and we will live as one. With hope and urgency, with faith in humanity's highest potential, and with love for every member of our shared family, we invite you to join us in this commitment. The call is clear. The time is now. The future is waiting. If these words stir something in you, if you feel the truth of our shared responsibility and our shared destiny, then we invite you to stand with us. Commit yourself to the care of humanity, to the healing of our planet, and to the awakening of a greater future. Join us in a global movement at humanitiesteam.com, where together, in unity and oneness, we will rise to create a sustainable and flourishing planet for current and future generations. Signed, Neale Donald Walsch, author of Conversations with God and co-founder of Humanity's Team, and Steve Farrell, Executive Director and co-founder of Humanity's Team. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are privileged to have two gentlemen with us who are going to share with us something that, I'm sorry, you are going to want to know about. Quite honestly, it is something that its time has come, shall we say. And I'm going to share with this share this with you, and it has to do with a letter, a very important letter to humanity from our guests, Neale Donald Walsch, name sound familiar, Steve Farrell. Does that name sound familiar as well? And this is the gist of the letter, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing. This is even the short version. And basically, it says, "We call upon all people of conscience across every culture, faith, and uh, unite for the common good, so we may ensure a sustainable future for all. And if we are to pass along a healthy planet to our children and future, the time for action is now. The path humanity is walking today is perilous, exposes us to all to suffering, division, decline. Yet another path is open, and it affirms the path that can heal, uplift, and guide us into a future of peace." And a couple of the key points that we want to talk about here on the program in regards to this letter have to do with recognizing that all are members of one human family, and that we choose to listen over judgment. Are you listening over judgment, folks? We accord each person the dignity and integrity they deserve. We create cultures of compassion, not fear, beginning in our own homes. And we also act as stewards for the earth. There's a great line in a beautiful Irish song that goes like this: "You don't own the land owns you." And with that, we welcome Neale Donald Walsch and Steve Farrell to the program to talk about this letter and what it means and what they hope to accomplish through the dissemination, not only through Tell Me Your Story, but through all the other aspects. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We're real happy to be here.
Now, I could go down a laundry list, your resume, if you will, your bio of all of the wonderful things that you both have done. But we want to stay focused on the here and the now. And we want to talk about this letter. First of all, who came up with this idea of a letter to humanity? Neale?
Steve Farrell.
We work closely together.
Yeah, Steve Farrell, however, he's a man of action. Now, he has the unique ability to turn ideas into reality. That's why he's the worldwide executive director of Humanity's team. He can turn ideas into reality. So he had, I'm sure, somewhere in the back of his brilliant mind, a thought, let's send a letter to humanity itself. And let's make sure that everyone, as many people as we know, can find out about that letter. And so that's what's going on. I had a chance to read the letter, and of course, in a sense, in a broad general sense, Richard, I did kind of collaborate on some of the wording because some of the wording comes from what Steve and I both hold dear to our hearts about the reality of life here on Earth, and life, for that matter, after we leave this life. So we do hold some of the same thoughts. So in that sense, you could say that some of the wording belongs to me. But the idea behind the letter, and let's get it out there and let's move it into the world, that's all Steve Farrell.
And by the way, folks, if you would like to read this letter, whether it's the long form or the short form, it is humanitiesteam.org. That's humanitiesteam, TEAM.org. We hope you'll go there. Steve, talk to us about this letter and where you are coming from in terms of this. I would venture that for you, it sort of kind of came through the divine. I don't want to say that you channeled it, don't get me wrong, but that you were inspired by spirit, by the divine, if you will, by that still small voice to say, hey, it's time to do something, and you were given direction to do so.
Yeah, well, and of course, the whole message of Conversations with God, and that what Neale and I take out into the world when we speak like this is God. God is talking to all of us all the time. And thank you. You were referring to the still small voice. That's exactly right. It's, there's a soul, in that heart space where we quiet our mind and go into our daily practice, create rituals. So we get it all. Guidance, and then the support that follows guidance. And of course, that's what's central to this whole discussion here, right? There's no separation. There is no separation between creator and created. And so, boy, you don't need to ever feel alone because you're never alone, right? But let me just stay with the question here. Conversations with God, if you've read the 9-book series, and I'd certainly encourage everybody to, the last of the 9 books is called Awaken the Species. Okay, that's what Neale and I are doing here now. This is an Awaken the Species meeting that we're having and thank you for reading, Richard, some of this letter for humanity that says, this is an important time. It's urgent. We need to awaken now, for ourselves and certainly for our kids and future generations. Now, and Awaken the Species, just as the name suggests, says this is the time, boy, you want to bend that path and create a sustainable and flourishing earth and just take off the table these things, existential crisis that we hear, right, with documentaries being made that are saying you keep going in the direction you're going and it isn't going to look good for kids and future generations. So that's why this important letter for humanity is so important and urgent. And I just want to add, down through the ages, and Richard, you see this in this important letter for humanity. See, this is something that back to Plato, Plotinus. Okay, this is 400 BCE. Lao Tzu. Okay, this is again in the BCE era. And then I don't want to take the time to read now all of the religionists and scientists and philosophers. See, there are many, many, many that have shared over this course of 2,500 years that there is no separation. Einstein said that the greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation, where we think we're separate from our divine source, right? And he talked about the God of Spinoza, which was about 2/3 of the way there. He doesn't really see the personal God that is, in fact, here, but he does see that there's no separation, that just like nature, we're all expressing as part of this one, this whole, this ecosystem of life, you could call it. So, Neale and I are grateful to be able to come on your program and talk about this. This is, we believe, the most important thing on the planet that we could be talking about today. And that's a big statement, but we really mean it.
Why it's important, if I could just tag on to what Steve was saying.
Please.
Why it's important, in my view, is this. There's a huge problem facing humanity right now at many levels, ecologically, spiritually, politically, financially, in just about every way. Really, there's a challenge. Humanity's biggest problem, however, is that much of humanity doesn't understand what the biggest problem is. That is, we can see the outcome of the biggest problem, but we can't get clear, or many, many people are not clear on what's causing that outcome. Now, you know what, Richard? You know you've got a big problem when you can see the result of the problem, but don't know what's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I have observed in the past 15 or 20 years, that we see the result of the problem. The result of the biggest problem facing humanity is, in a word, alienation.
Mm.
I have seen a level of alienation between people of different religions, different cultures, different political persuasions, different races, different sexual orientations, even different genders. I have seen a level of alienation running rampant throughout the world more profoundly and more disastrously than I have seen in much of the 82 years of my lifetime. When I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and my early 50s, I wouldn't have dreamt of seeing the kinds of things going on, which are going on the planet right now, alienating activities. So now let me clarify what I believe is causing the biggest problem in the world today. What is causing all the alienation? I think Steve nailed it when he put it into one word: separation.
Mm-hmm.
the story of separation. We think we're separate from each other. I think I've got my agenda. You've got your agenda. You have your thoughts about how to achieve your agenda. I have my thoughts about how to achieve my agenda. My agenda, of course, is, you'll forgive me, far more important than your agenda. So if I have to do something to you, even something, frankly, that might damage you in some way, in order to achieve my agenda, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I've recapped the history on this planet for the past several hundred years.
Yeah.
You know, we've had armed conflict on this planet for all but 5% of recorded history. And we call ourselves an advanced civilization. But we've missed the major truth about our civilization. And when I had my conversation with God, and let me help people understand, it was simply a private personal experience. I was never attempting to write a book. I simply was exasperated with the life that I was experiencing. So I sat down one day and wrote an angry letter to God. I, never dreaming that anyone else would ever read it. I just, it was just Richard, it was just an idea of how I could just get my thoughts out, get my feelings out, and not be holding them all in. So I wrote this angry letter to God. Dear God, what does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? And I can recall writing, tell me the rules. I'll play this silly game called life. Just tell me the rules. Mm-hmm. And after you give me the rule book, don't change it. Because my experience has been that life's rules were changing from decade to decade, sometimes from moment to moment. So I just wanted some consistency. I'm writing this angry letter to God. And then, like many of us have heard, I heard a voice deep within, as Steve pointed out, that still small voice that all of us hear. We simply may call it something else. Maybe people don't call it, a conversation with God. They might call it women's intuition, or an epiphany, or a sudden insight, or a moment of awareness. But whatever words we use, it's the same thing. And I heard that still small voice within saying, Neale, just take down everything that I'm telling you, because you're going to want to remember it. So I did. And I just wrote pages and pages on a yellow legal pad of what I was hearing, which brought up other questions that I had to ask, which brought up other answers, which produced other questions, which produced other answers, but all circulating around a single profound insight. 4 words: we are all one. And what the God of my understanding said to me, Richard, was 95% of the world's problems would be resolved if we simply embraced the notion that we are all one. Or as some guy said, I guess he was walking around the planet around 2,000 years ago, and he said, I have an idea. How about if you just do unto others as you would have it done unto you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what the friends of him that took those words down probably failed to take down all that he said. I'm certain that after that he said, because what you do unto others is being done unto you for an elegant reason. There's only one of us. What you do to another, you do to yourself, and what you do to yourself, you do to another, and what you fail to do for another, you fail to do for yourself. It's all circular. Yep. And it's such a simple, excuse me, I'm going to stop talking now because otherwise I could go on for an hour and a half. And this is not the Neale Donald Walsch show, but let me just conclude by saying, Richard, is so simple. If we simply embrace the notion that we are all one and behave politically, spiritually, economically, financially, socially, philosophically, if we behaved in a way that demonstrated that we are all one, as I said a minute ago, the world's major problems would go away overnight. If we care for our children and our children's children, now is the time to move into that awareness and to put it into practice.
Absolutely. We're talking with Neale Donald Walsch and Steve Farrell, and we are talking about Humanity's Team. It's humanitiesteam.org. Please Go there, read the letter, share it, send it on to everyone you can think of, and maybe some that you can't think of. Just put it out there, put it up on social media in every place that you can, because the more exposure it gets, the better the chances are that we are going to make a difference in this world as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I have promoted, gentlemen, Neale Donald Walsch and Steve Farrell, the concept that words have power. And the first word I want to deal with is the word tolerance. I hate that word. I hate to hate, but I don't like it because the word itself has in it judgment. I'm going to tolerate you, whereas I say don't tolerate anybody. Accept everyone else. And even if they rub you the wrong way, and there are a lot of people, gentlemen, that we both know, who are rubbing a lot of people all kinds of different ways. And here's the big challenge that I'd love for us to talk about. You talk about we're all one. I agree with you. I mean, even Jesus spoke of our oneness, that we are all gods and so forth, and so on and so forth, that we're all, even from a scientific standpoint. I think it was Carl Sagan who made the comment that we're all made of the same stuff.
It was Carl Sagan. That's correct.
And yet, I remember as a kid, of course, being introduced, if you will, or exposed to this concept of racism. In terms of judging somebody by the color of their skin. And I thought, I don't understand that, because if I cut that black person and that brown person, that yellow person and that green person and so on and so on and so on, the only color that comes out of that cut is red. How is it that they say we're different when we all bleed red? What's that? What is that phrase? I don't know if it's Shakespeare or not. If you cut me, do I not bleed? And in this case, we all bleed red. So this concept of tolerance, I say no more. Acceptance. There's no judgment in acceptance. It doesn't mean that I like what you're doing, that I agree with what you're saying. It means that I accept the fact that you and I both have a right to be here. Now, with that being said, the message from this letter, it's not forcing anyone to do anything. I have a book called Choices, 5 Steps for Life. And in the letter, you talk about how this new path is just that, a choice. Nobody is being forced. How long has this letter been out, and what's been the reaction?
It's been out, oh gosh, maybe a month. And, it's taken a little while to sort of get this thing moving through channels so that you could read it, Richard. Neale and I have gone on some programs. We've got other ones we're going on. But what's the reaction? Are these, just like right now, sparks are flying, when we talk. The last program, sparks are flying. How could they not, right? When you really listen into what we're talking about, they need to fly. That's the whole purpose, is we need to elevate this so that this discussion is out in the collective, that it's right now, it's not even on the menu, quite honestly. Yeah. If you talk about a global public discourse, this isn't something that's on the menu. There's all of these things being talked about, but this notion of that there's actually a root cause to individual and collective dysfunction, challenge, etc. And there's a simple remedy. Oh my gosh, that belongs on the menu, and it belongs in public discussion. And so we're going to stay at it, until it happens. It's important and urgent now. And let me one thing. We're talking about the collective nature of this, the kids and future generations and so on. But let me bring in the individual dimension of it. What the wisdom tradition share, and what Conversations with God shares, is the whole, we come from the light, right? We return to the light. And the invitation here is to be the light. It's actually to express love, right? And at the end of our life and through life review and so on, that's really the whole thing is, but we could also go in the other direction, constrict, boa constrictor, constrict, right? Where we sort of hold tight. and we're in this place of judgment and division and these things. Honestly, as I look at the billionaire class, I don't know whether I want to use, I don't know what word I want to use, but a sympathy, because I don't think they really have this awareness that we're talking about here. And it's that, again, 2,000 year ago story of look at the lilies and all of their beauty and so on. And even Solomon, boy, he didn't have this, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing where you're on a private jet and these kinds of things and enjoying these things. And I'm not trying to talk that wealth down, though honestly, I would be distributing it, if it were me. But where you really find it, this whole lily thing, this peace beyond understanding thing, this is where we understand that the underlying unity and oneness, and we're living into it, and we're understanding that being an expression of love, each of us in our own way, like even Neale and I have very beautifully different ways of expressing this. And that also, of course, when we talk about unity and oneness, there's a diversity in it. So we all have these beautiful, our own genius, our own ways of expressing it. So for individuals, I hate to see them go to the end of their life without this awareness, without this opportunity to understand, oh my God, this is why I'm really here, and now I can live into it before we get to the end of our life. So we're certainly talking to individuals as well here.
And Richard, Stephen just touched on an important word. I was going to make virtually the same comment. What I notice is that fascinatingly, Steve and I often have the same thoughts, as he said, expressed maybe in a little bit different way. But I was just about to say, and Steve beat me to it. Of course, he spent his life beating me to everything. But in this case, he beat me to it because, you mentioned that don't tolerate, give up tolerance, and replace tolerance with acceptance. And what I wanted to say was, when you first said that, the average person would say, yeah, but I mean, come on, Richard, how? How can I accept another person when they have a point of view that's radically and dramatically and profoundly different from my own, even injuriously so, or at least I feel it's injurious to me to accept their point of view. So I was going to say at that point, would you entertain the notion to replace the word acceptance with understanding? See, if a person says, how do I accept a person with whom I dramatically disagree? The answer comes, in my opinion, from what I received in my conversations with God, who said to me, Neale, sweetheart, understanding replaces tolerance. When you can understand, not necessarily agree with, and not necessarily go along with, but understanding. When you can say to another person, you know what, I don't agree with you, but I can understand how you could feel the way you feel. Now we've found common ground. Now we're not making each other wrong. We're simply saying, you've come to a different understanding than I have come to. Is there a way for us to disagree agreeably?
Yeah.
Do our differences have to create divisions?
No.
Do our variances have to create violence? And so, if we can actually move to a place of deep understanding, not only does understanding replace tolerance, understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
Yeah. Fascinating. And I will tell you that I am certainly open to making those adjustments. In a previous interview, we were chatting away and I shared my perspective on a point he made, and he says, well, think about it from this perspective. And I said, okay. And I pondered it for a few seconds and I said, okay, there's another one of my straw huts up in flames, and I'm willing to burn them all to the ground to start over if necessary in order to be a better person, to be a better person to myself and to others, to this world, and hopefully to leave a lasting legacy that will make a difference. Because most of the very material types of things that are going on in the world today, that everybody is, really emotionally charged up over, in 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 years from now, it's not going to matter. I mean, think about, and what came to my mind when I was thinking about that as you were speaking was Abraham Lincoln and him being assassinated in the theater. And I'm thinking, okay, that was like, I don't know, what, 150 years ago or something like that. How does that really affect me today? Or if I had children and they were in their 80s or 90s and I'm gone, how does that really, what difference does that make? We saw an angry man do something that we saw was rather abhorrent. It's a damn shame. And of course, even as you and I speak here, we are remembering, of course, the assassination in 63 of John F. Kennedy and the same kind of thing. It's like, these things that happen. And that's why, gentlemen, I'm curious as to your observations on this. I came up with this three-part, and it was a fourth part that was added by one of my guests, or step process, in order to get through to that level of understanding. And the first one was the most difficult. And I got this insight that said, you must say this out loud to the person that you have issues with. Teacher, that was the last thing I wanted to call this person. Teacher, thank you for teaching me how not to be. Second step, I forgive you, but I more importantly forgive myself for allowing myself to be dragged into this quagmire. And then to your point, both Neale and Steve, third point is, what is it that you are so afraid of that makes you speak and behave the way that you do? I'm not asking you to change. I want to understand so I can move on with my life. And then the fourth point, and I thought it was a very salient point at the time. Again, it's a little easier if you've gone through the first 3 points, but that it's 3 words and you have to mean it. I love you. You have a right to be here just as I do. I don't have to like what you are saying or doing, but I have to give you permission to do and be who and what you are. And if I need to speak up, and that's where this letter, I believe, comes in. If I need to speak up, then I'm going to do so. To that end, I want to ask, what do you want people to do beyond spreading the letter and getting people to read it and take it in? And as I like to quote from A Stranger in a Strange Land, to grok it. What do you want them to do?
Well, so at the most basic level, first of all, thank you for taking us through that whole thought process where you're facing something troubling. Because I think that's a good one for your back pocket, to really, and where you ended, I love you, because that, again, in my understanding, looking at wisdom traditions and conversations with God, this is actually why we're here. This is why, the non-physical realm, you don't need to worry about. It's beautiful, it's love and light and, oh my God, but it wasn't enough to know, right? And conversations with God, actually, this beautiful children's book that Neale has, A Little Soul in the Sun, tells this story so beautifully and in words that even a child could understand, where the child is saying, I want to be that, and God says, well, you are that, and the child says, well, yeah, but I'm kind of a candle in the sun here. Everything is that, right? John says, oh, I get it. You want to be that in the absence of this, where you're in the relative world has got darkness all over the place. Got it. Okay. And then boom, you embody that simple little children's story, I think, tells the true story of why we're here. And to answer your question, where we just start with awareness, which probably many of the people, Richard, on your show are conscious already. So they're way beyond just aware, and then the next step is understanding, probably way beyond understanding. The next one is as we start to embody. If it's true, then you can't have 2 feet in 2 different worlds. This was part of our earlier journey for Neale and me. You can't just be in this world of separation and there's no God here and so on. And a world where you understand deeply that God is actually here always, at every moment, always, right? So embody then is the next step, and then expressing is the next step. And that's where the real beauty is. That's the fruit, is where in your situation, I was walking my dog the other day, Richard, I was with my son. My two kids are adopted. My son's now 23, and he can. My dog peed on somebody's lawn, and the guy said, "Hey," and really went off on me. And where I went to as he was going off on me was, oh my God, I wonder whether it was something that happened to him today or a lifetime of misery and challenge, or just empathy was what was coming up. Of boy, he's really in some deep trauma here. Now my son was with me, and he was 22 at the time and younger and still figuring things out. And he says, "Hey, nobody talks to my dad like that," and blah, blah, blah. And I said, Dylan, we had a nice chat on the way home. I said, Dylan, you know, you don't want to, we don't want to go back on somebody like this, understand what made him yell like that. He didn't hurt me. It didn't hurt me at all, and he expressed a preference of big brother. My dog didn't pee on his lawn. It's okay. We want to go to a place of a little prayer for him, or see angels with them, guides, which actually is real, right? Too. We can actually create that. There is an afterlife here, right? Supporting us always. So that's kind of where we can go, is into this whole revolving door of life, understanding why we're here, embodying it, expressing it. Again, we're going to express it in our own unique ways. There's a diversity in this unity and oneness, but it's beautiful. All of whatever those expressions might be. And then we're going to live the life of our dreams, where we really, we're getting it. And if you know my story, Richard, I was in Silicon Valley, I was in YPO, Newsom, governor of California was in my chapter, and equally brilliant people. And they all, half of them had private jets and all of that. And I left to join with Neale because I could see this was where I was really going to find it. This is where I would find a fulfilling life, and where I could contribute to the planet. Not there where I'd already started two companies, where you just serial entrepreneur, and at the end of my life, I knew I would feel like I wasted my life. So what we're talking about here is where we can create a truly fulfilling life and contribute to creating this sustainable and flourishing planet for our kids and future generations. And how wonderful is that?
And
Neale, how about you? What do you want people to do?
I want people to do exactly what Steve suggested, but I would put it into one sentence, as dear Mr. Gandhi did, put it in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Be the change you wish to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I would invite people to do. That's the end. That's the bottom line, so to speak. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Interact with others as if we are all one, and allow people to have their point of view, just as Steve just said, without having to necessarily resort to verbal and certainly not physical violence, or to copy the energy and send the same energy back, the same kind of negative energy back that we may be receiving from another person.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're talking here about a simple thing called love. But it's my observation, Richard, that far too many people do not understand love, because we do not understand God's love. Many people have been told, billions of people have been told, that here's how God loves us. God judges, condemns, and punishes us if we don't do what God commands. And so we are told that God's love is transactional. It's a transaction. You do what I want you to do, and I'll love you in return. But if you don't do what I demand that you do, then you will be punished forever. When I was 9 years old, Richard, I was told in my third grade class that the parish priest, I was raised in a Roman Catholic family. I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm not attacking any particular religion, just expressing an actual experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
The priest came in to teach us catechism. He was teaching about mortal sin, the worst kind of offense that one could commit against God, and so-called venial sin, which was described to me as kind of a spiritual misdemeanor. So I raised my little 9-year-old hand, and I said, Father, Can you help me understand what is a mortal sin? I was certain he was going to say, certainly, my son, a mortal sin would be killing someone or stealing someone's life savings or in some way or another hurting or damaging someone beyond repair. That would be a mortal sin. But the priest didn't say that. He said, my child, it's a mortal sin if you miss Mass on Sunday without a good excuse.
Mm.
I'm sorry, one more sentence.
Yes.
If I miss going to church on Sunday without a good excuse, I've committed the gravest offense against God. And if I die with that sin on my soul and I haven't had a chance to confess it, God will send me to everlasting damnation for the action of a 9-year-old who chose to play softball one Sunday morning rather than go to Mass. I mean, and this is the God I was told to believe in. Neale, God's love is transactional. And of course, because I've thought that God's love is transactional, God loves us if I played the same game in my life until I was 53 years old.
Mm.
Everybody that I loved, especially the women in my life, I played the game called I love you if you give me what I need and what I want, I'll give you what you need and you want. Fair trade, it's a transaction. But if you don't give me what I need and what I want, you've lost me as your life partner and as someone who loves you. But then somewhere after my conversations with God, I was able to look at the person on the pillow next to me and say, you know what? I love you the way God loves me. And my wife would say, and how is that? And I would say, I love you, sweetheart. No matter what.
Yeah. It's fascinating how we've gone through our respective processes. I worked for 15 years from the early 80s into around 95 for a Christian radio station at the height of televangelism. And I was struggling with all kinds of different things. And when you talk about this concept of the rules and regulations, and then, of course, if you don't follow them, where you're going to wind up. And I finally was able, it took 5 years within that arena to reject and no longer believe in the concepts of this literal devil and a hell, because what it said to me was, if that's the way it is, that means that God is an extortionist. And that's not the God that I, shall we say, look to for guidance. I do not look to an extortionist for those purposes. And you talked, it really got to mind. We've got felony spiritual sins and misdemeanor spiritual sins, and it's like, I'm just not buying it. And the more I research, the more that I search, since I was 17, I've been searching, and my search won't end until, well, I don't know if it'll end even when I do pass on. Um, but that's what we're doing here. We're searching for better ways to live, for ways in which we can work and play and love and live together, whether we're related in blood or otherwise. And we encourage you folks to get a copy of this letter. We will have a link on SoundCloud as well as YouTube for you folks to go to see this letter, to read this letter. And I want to let our listeners know that these gentlemen are sharing with us this conversation is being heard at other times as well, but initially on Thanksgiving morning 2025, where we want you to take some time to think about what we're talking about, what these gentlemen, Neale Donald Walsch and Steve Farrell, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. This is Tell Me Your Story. I am Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and I want to talk a little bit about, I mentioned earlier, Steve, and Neale, I'm going to actually start with you in terms of this internal process. We've been promoting since September of 2019, encouraging people to go within during what at that point was the year of Perfect Vision 2020. And then when that went by, the decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still small voice. First of all, How important is that in your life and in your, I'm going to use the word, in your evolutionary process to be the very best Neale Donald Walsch you can be?
Well, it's the single most important aspect of that evolutionary process. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that I'm the best person that I could be. I'm a work in progress, and I
Mhm.
haven't reached the place where I could say that 100% of the time I behave in the way that I have been invited to behave. And when I hear that still small voice, but at least now I know the path that I'm on. I know, where my evolutionary process is seeking to take me. So to answer your question directly, it's the single most important aspect of my movement into a different raison d'etre, as the French would say. I have
Mhm.
embraced a different raison d'etre, a different reason for being. And my reason for being now has nothing to do with my career, my income, my right livelihood, or any of the physical outcomes that I used to yearn for and seek to create in my life.
Mhm.
And, it's not that those physical outcomes can't be useful and can't be helpful and can't be enjoyable and can't be fulfilling. It's just that they're not the purpose of, in my understanding, they're not the purpose of our life here in the realm of the physical. But
Mhm.
I'm a spiritual being. I'm a soul.
Mhm.
And my agenda, excuse me, my agenda is to announce and declare, to express and fulfill, to become and to demonstrate my true identity as an individuation of divinity. And when I do that, this is what's fascinating. What I've learned is on the occasion that I do that, and again, I'm not pretending that I'm walking on water here and that I'm the perfect human being, but there have been times when I've been able to express exactly what I'm describing. And when I move through life in that way, you know what's fascinating? Everything else that I was striving for falls in on me automatically. Or as that guy that I mentioned a few minutes ago once said, seek ye first
Mhm.
the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you.
Yeah.
And the kingdom of God is a single kingdom that simply tells us, folks, we are all one. Treat each other that way, and 85% of your problems will go away overnight.
It's interesting. I don't know how many, I do want to get to you, Steve, because I'm going to ask you the same question, but I have multiple versions of the Bible, for example. And I like to refer to them and the Gita and all of the others as ancient wisdom teachings. But in one of the translations of the New Testament by Johannes Graeber, who wrote a book called Communication with the Spirit World of God, and uh, he channeled a translation of the New Testament. And that passage that you quoted, he phrases this way: Seek ye first communication with the spirit world of God, and all these things will be added unto you. I don't really see that there's that much difference because even in, as you know, Neale, in our upbringing, I'm also raised Roman Catholic. Uh, I believe that the saints, my father, my eldest sister, and others that have gone on before me, every time I call on their name, like I call on
Yes.
my dad at the end of every program, I say, Dad, be happy because I'm happy. I've been told by many, your dad's right there with you. He's there to help you. And when I do the
With the
same thing,
speed of your thought, with the speed of your thought.
yes. Now, that's funny because you say that because I was talking with someone about this and I says, I can't seem to get the question out quickly enough. And they said, well, you need to listen faster. And I said, okay, I'll work on that. Let me jump over to you, Steve. And what about your process and that inner life? And I actually wanted to tag onto that. And Neale, I'll let you addendum yours in just a moment. Talk to us about your evolutionary process, going back to childhood or when you started doing your, what I call search for your purpose, your meaning, your existence, etc., etc. And talk to us a little bit about Steve's process.
Yes, well, first of all, it's unanimous because I was also Roman Catholic Church and altar boy myself. So we we all have a similar past here. And of course, the church was what it was then, and not, Pope Francis. Wow, he kind of really took the church forward, didn't he? So
Mm.
now I'll say that when I was young, I fortunately did have this other very different conception of God, of the divine, and which was that I was always loved and guided, and the wind was at my back, and so on. And it's why, actually, again, if you know my story, in the 1995, I was now 5 years into my first startup, and we were growing like crazy. And I read Neale's book one, which came out in 1995, and the God of my understanding spoke to me in that book. It was like, oh my God, I'm reading right here in writing this loving, too good to be true, if you want to call it that, which Neale hears that all the time as people talk about conversations with God. God, that this was my understanding of God, and it's why I resonated so deeply and why I was just whacked over the head almost, in the sense that I, over a period of months and years, just knew, man, I got to leave. I got to leave Silicon Valley. I got to leave startup land and entrepreneurship and young entrepreneurs organization and all of these things where I now was officers, because there was something much bigger, much better that was in my future. And I'll say it actually was a year and a half, between the time that I left everything and sold everything and the phone call with Neale, where I then joined a planning session for humanities team. So I went 18 months actually without knowing what the heck I was going to do. It was one of these classic examples of, you better let those doors close if there's other doors that are going to open, right? And so that really did play out in my life. But now, as to this going within and God's space and daily practice and rituals and things, yeah, it's everything. Even now, see, there's nature right out my window. And when we talk about this oneness, as we know, it's actually, yeah, with God, but with nature, with the planet, with each other, us, with all of life. It's all, we're all a part of this one body. And so even now, beyond my daily practice, which is morning and evening and afternoon and stuff, and my rituals and things, I can even right in this very moment feel like this beautiful energy that is, it's a God energy. It's this perfect love, perfect light that nature, of course, is that, right? Where you can see this just gentle breeze, and it's just trees move so
Mm.
quietly and slowly and effortlessly. It's a divine energy, and so it can actually be with you throughout your day. And also, this work that Neale and I are doing, there's a certain um, contagion, I'll call it, from our articulations. But the biggest contagion, I think, is where people are feeling into something that is your daily practice, your connection, your communing with God, where people sense there's some kind of peace about it, there's some kind of wisdom, there's something, and people hear these messages that we're sharing, which really can resonate deeply, and then they feel a little bit that too, and then they say, okay, I want some of that. I'd like to try that. And that's how this really spreads, is where we sort of connect with the head and the heart, which I think we're doing here on this program. We touch the head and the heart. But my daily practice, this loving God, it's reciprocal. That's part of what this creates. Is I know how loved I am, and I love God back just as much as I can on a human level, as she loves me. So it's a reciprocal. And as I've shared often, and Neale knows, when I read that first book, and certainly I've read all nine, the Conversations with God series is so beautiful that early in the process of reading these books, I said, "Oh my God, this dream that's articulated about how we can live individually and on a planet and as one and so on, that dream's my dream. This is my dream." Which is why it was very easy when Neale called and said, "Hey, you want to come up to a planning session about humanities team?" I said, "Of course I do."
Mm.
Where we can put this dream on the ground, which is what we're doing on this program, where we're sharing kind of how this works. There's nothing with what's going on in today's world. We're mostly focused on the beauty of this, but boy, look out the window at what's, the division and, even gun violence and these things. This is our moment for sure, where this needs to spill out in the open now. And this is why Neale and I are so passionate about taking these messages out to the media, because really, this is our moment.
Yeah. Well, I want to share that with you, the two of you, something that only those who are on YouTube can see, and I think you gentlemen can see that. That is the lake up here where we live. It's a smaller lake, but it's a beautiful lake. And we moved here a little over a month ago from Santa Barbara, California, which was a beautiful place, is a beautiful place also. But nature, as I have said on this program, and I'd love for us to talk a little bit about this because I think it's part of the equation here. Nature is our greatest teacher. Neale?
Nature is our greatest teacher. Steve?
Yeah, yeah. Nature is our, let me even tell a story about this. I've don't have a standing desk yet, and I sit too long because I'm very passionate about my work. And so I got a little stenitis, so you got to walk that out, right? And over those last weeks walking and through the fall. Now, my neighbors have these trees, and as I'm walking down the driveway and back up, every day it's like a masterful painter has come out and the most perfect colors that you could imagine, which change every day. It goes a little different, red and yellow and blue and purple. But it's just like a master painter has come overnight, as I look at those trees and go, oh my God, are there, could you create a collage of colors more beautiful than this? That change every day. This is nature. This is one teeny little example of nature as we talk about it.
Mm.
And Richard, I should admit and acknowledge that I'm a tree hugger. I really am. There's an apple tree in our backyard, and at every harvest season, it drops about 150 apples to the ground. I mean, a huge plethora of golden ripe apples.
Mm-hmm.
And I go out there a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a year, and I just give the tree a hug. I literally stand in my backyard and hug the tree and give the tree a little smooch. And I just say to the tree, thank you. Thank you for being a life form that informs me about life itself and the beauty and the whole process that has been created on this planet and in the realm of the physical. So folks, you know what? Love life and life will love you.
Oh, in a big way. We're talking with Neale Donald Walsch. He is the author of Conversations with God. He's the co-founder of Humanity's Team. And we have Steve Farrell, executive director and co-founder of Humanity's Team. Humanitiesteam.org is the website. That's humanitiesteam.org. And you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. We bring about on this program, Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world. And it is time for a new paradigm. The way that we've been doing things has kind of worn thin for a lot of us, at least in my opinion, my observation. That's another thing too, gentlemen, is when I share what I share, that's mine, okay? I'm not telling anybody to live any particular way, do anything any particular way. You choose to do that, that's on you. But I am led by the voice that I hear, that still small voice, just as a lot of other folks are. Another portion of this letter, by the way, God does not take sides. Neither must we. Red state or blue state, this faith or that faith, these, I believe this is dichotomies, the blind, that blind us to the truth that we are all part of one whole. To deny this is to deny reality itself. To embrace it is to align with the very heartbeat of life. I was a Baha'i for about a year and a half back in the early 90s. And one of the phrases of Baha'u'llah that has stayed with me to this day, if you reject one of the messengers of God, you reject them all. If you accept one of the messengers of God, you accept them all. And I believe that even applies basically to the message that the messengers were bringing. And if we could only get to a place where we would understand, and it kind of goes back to that conversation we were having about tolerance versus acceptance versus understanding, we would be a lot further along. I mean, I grew up watching the Jetsons. Where are the flying cars? Now, that's the material thing. But Star Trek says space, the final frontier. I think it's the second to the last final frontier. The final frontier is the inner life. Would you gentlemen agree with that?
I would agree, and Richard, with regret, I have about 30 seconds left. I made a 1 hour commitment to be here with you, so I'm going to have to leave here at the top of the hour. But I agree with what you just said completely.
Well, then I'm going to ask you the three questions I ask all of my guests right now. And they are, first and foremost, who is Neale Donald Walsch?
A normal human being with faults and failures and successes like anybody else on the planet.
What gets you up in the morning?
The idea that I might be able to serve another human being in a way that causes me to experience who I really am.
And finally, what was your best day?
Well, I want to say the day I had my conversations with God, but I would say also it's a tie. My best day was the day that I met my wife.
Well, I want to thank you so much. I hope we can have you back again to have further conversations. Blessings to you. And Steve, I hope you can stay for just a few moments more.
I will. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Neale.
Neale, thank you so much.
You're
Blessings
very
to you.
welcome. Thank you.
Steve, this is, for me, it's extraordinary to have the opportunity to speak with a couple of gentlemen, a couple of individuals who are me and I am them, as we've discussed, and want essentially the same thing. And I've read a lot of books. I mean, there's one book I carry around with me. I don't know if you ever heard of The Impersonal Life by James Banner.
No, I haven't.
He wrote several other books, but they were sort of channeled. But the Impersonal Life is it's like God talking to you and saying, you think that you think your thoughts are your own, you think your actions are your own, you think that you've lived previous lives, etc., when in fact, all of that was my manifestation, being the divine. It was all the divine's manifestation. He, she, it, I just want to know the name. I don't care what the pronouns are. Just tell me the name, that kind of thing. But it seems to me that over the years, and I'm seeing more of these little videos on Facebook and YouTube and so forth, where people are getting on there and they're sharing their research and study and how man has, in his or her own way, held us back from knowing the truth. And one of my guests, I posed this. I says, one day, will we know who we really are? And he said, no. He said, one day, we will know who we have always been. Have you gotten in touch with the answer to that question as to who you and or we really are? Is it just that we're all one, that we're all light workers, and that we're all coming from and going back to the light?
Well, I have gotten in touch with that. So this is what's interesting here, Richard, is when I was referencing Plato, Plotinus, Lao Tzu, and I could, we could Meister Eckhart, Saint Teresa of Avila, Teilhard de Chardin, right? There are hundreds of these names that are notables and scientists, Nobel Prize winners, etc., that have talked about this underlying unity and oneness. Now, what's interesting is people call that research or science or something. Do you know what it is, though, that they're all talking about a pre-existing reality? A pre-existing reality. What we're talking about here, we're not trying to create something new, let's do this and be, create a world that's one. This has been the reality of the planet all the way back through time, and in fact, from the beginning of the Big Bang, that there is no separation between creator and created. And all of these people, I've read just a few of their names, have given their lives to sharing about this pre-existing reality. And then many of them, most of them, have actually lived into it, each in their own way. So this is the important thing. This is that we don't, right now, we're sleepwalking through life where we think we're separate from each other and God and nature and so on. Even I hardly am on social media much. In the last week, I was shocked when I was on X to see Musk, of all people, saying that, oh, maybe Spinoza was right. Remember Albert Einstein, he believed in the God of Spinoza. Spinoza was in the early 1600s, a philosopher, a Jew. He was excommunicated because he said there's no separation, that everything, we're all actually emanations of, live expressions of a source, divine source. And interestingly, you even had Musk saying, yeah, this is probably true. And of course, then, boy, X went wild. You had people coming in on all sides of it. But and people were saying, now, if it is true, wouldn't it be true that we'd probably be more moral and ethical if we thought we were living expressions of this body, of this ecosystem, right? This pre-existing reality works that way. So this is really the thing, and of course, this is what we've been talking about during this program. But I don't think very often people consider, as we're talking about it, that before we have our awakening experience, that we're sleepwalkers. Just thinking, walking around, and at night, thinking, feeling very alone. We're not alone. Walking around thinking we have very little effect on others. We do have a great effect on others. That's what entanglement means, when science affirms this truth, right? Yeah. So I'll stop there, but that's why this is important. We don't want to sleepwalk through life. Let's just open our eyes and really can live into what is so.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to get in the car, say, I'm going to point B, and then all of a sudden you're at point B wondering, how did I get here? That's different from doing the same thing every day. Einstein said it quite well. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And if all you're doing is 9 to 5 and coming home, dinner and a beer and going to sleep and getting up the next morning and getting ready to go and off to work you go 5 days a week. And then Saturday, maybe you go to a football game, basketball game, baseball game, whatever. Sunday, you go to church. I find it that to me, if that serves you, more power to you. I'm not here to tell you to do anything different, but I think what you're saying, Steve, is that we need to shake things up. And my life has been shaken up. My wife's life and mine have been shaken up to the extent that before COVID, I was going into the office, going into the station 5 days a week. I enjoyed doing that. I liked being there around the people that would come in, around the equipment, doing production and so forth. COVID hits and the place is, so to speak, locked down. Now, I was the only one going in, but we all shifted to things like Zoom. There was Skype and so on and so forth. And that's how we started doing our programming. And I was the only one that would come into studio, even though the boss had plexiglass put up. And I'm not sure who that was for because I was the only one there. But then as time went on and the restrictions were lifted, I started to arrange my schedule to where I could stay home 1 day a week and 2 days a week. I was up to 3 days a week when we received our eviction notice in June. And I thought, okay, how am I going to make this work if we can't find a place nearby the station, in surrounding areas, communities? And then the next thing you know, we're thinking about moving here to Lake Arrowhead and up on the mountain. I'm thinking, okay, so how am I going to make this where I can work remotely 5 days a week? Well, guess what? I've been doing it since October the 12th. So it can be done. But those are the kinds of changes. And it has awakened me to the realization that we, you, Steve, and me, and everyone that's watching or listening, we can do anything. There is nothing that is beyond us. Am I right, or have I missed the boat somewhere? Am I living a Pollyanna dream here?
Yeah, no, and I need to drop too. I realized I'm supposed to be in another meeting, but yes, where we're given vision, we're always given provision. So always, we'll walk across deserts sometimes in that vision, and we're like, "Oh my God, I wonder if this time the provision is coming."
Yeah.
I promise you, it will come.
All right.
If it's a
Well,
real vision, as you and Richard, with your program in your life, clearly it is. You will absolutely get to your destination, as I will, as anybody would. And this is the big one: is please, for because this is a conscious audience, so we're all being given visions, and stay with that vision. Don't let go. You will be given provision. You will be walked straight into the beautiful vision and dream and plan that was given to us.
right. Steve Farrell's my guest. This is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D. And Steve, I know that you've got to run, so I'm going to jump into those three final questions that I asked Neale. I ask all of my guests, and I thank you for giving us so much time, even beyond what you were originally committed to. The first of those three questions, of course, is who is Steve Farrell?
So I am a human, and I'm also a part of divine presence, as we all are. And let me just emphasize there's in Neale and I, there's nothing, we are not special up above anybody. One of the things that we understand on this conscious journey is it's horizontal. There is no vertical. There is no vertical. So everybody here has that same potential, that same opportunity that we do. It's completely and totally equal.
What gets you up in the morning?
What gets me up in the morning is just the excitement of what we're talking about here now that I get to do with this team. We're now 22 years old as a nonprofit humanities team, and we also have the largest streaming platform now for consciousness raising masterclasses and education, and we do summits, and we're at the United Nations now with our Global Oneness Day. I'm just incredibly excited about really the ripples of impact that we're having out in the world. And I believe before I go to my final reward, this tipping point will happen. So that's what excites me.
And finally, what was your best day?
My best day, oh gosh, I'd like to think it's almost every day, today, and then it'll be tomorrow. It's I'm blessed that I get to live. I wouldn't trade my life with anybody anywhere on the whole planet. I'm so blessed by everything in my life, and so it's today, and then tomorrow it'll be tomorrow.
Wonderful. Well, Steve Farrell, I want to thank you again for joining us here on the program, along with Neale Donald Walsch, who had to leave a little bit early. I really do appreciate the time. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.